Imagine this. You've done everything right. You went to school, you landed a solid job, you've been aggressively saving for years, and you finally have $50,000 sitting in a high-yield savings account. And according to every financial rule you have ever been taught, that should mean you are ready. But in 2026, that $50,000 might actually be the most dangerous money you own. You walk into an open house for a $500,000 home. Nothing fancy, just a standard 3-bed, 2-bath in a decent school district. You are looking at the quartz countertops, thinking, I can finally do this. Then you sit down with a mortgage calculator. You plug in the 2026 interest rates, you add the property taxes, the homeowner's insurance, and that creeping cost of private mortgage insurance because you're not putting 20% down. And then, you see the number. The monthly payment isn't $2,000. It isn't even $3,000. By the time you add the hidden math, you're looking at nearly $4,000 a month. That's before groceries, before childcare, before car payments, before life. You look at your paycheck, then back at the screen, and you realize, despite making more money than your parents ever dreamed of, you might actually be house poor. My name is Maven, and I spend way too much time researching about financial psychology and the brutal reality of the housing market. If you're someone who feels like the goalposts for the American dream, keep moving every time you get close to them. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here's the thing about money in 2026. The sticker price of a house has become a total lie. We've been conditioned to think about the price of the home, but the bank only cares about the price of the money. And in 2026, the price of money is expensive. We are going to break down the cold, hard math most real estate videos avoid, and why passing this test matters more than owning a house. Towards the end of the video, I'm going to show you the psychological trap that's making people buy these homes even when the math says no way. Let's get into the numbers. In the early 2020s, we were spoiled. You could get a mortgage for 3%. But this is 2026. While rates have stabilized, we are still looking at an average 30-year fixed rate hovering around 6.2% to 6.5%. Now, $500,000 sounds like doctor money to some, or entry level to others depending on where you live. But regardless of your city, the math doesn't change. Let's say you buy that $500,000 house. You're a diligent saver, so you put down 10%, that's $50,000. You're financing $450,000. Principal and interest, at 6.3%, your base payment is $2,785. Property taxes. Nationally, we average about 1.1%. That's another $458 a month. Homeowners insurance. Prices have spiked recently. Expect to pay at least $175 a month. PMI, private mortgage insurance, because you didn't put 20% down, add another $200. Total, $3,618 per month. Wait, don't walk away yet. This is where most people don't realize they're making a mistake. That $3,618 is just the minimum cost to keep the bank from taking the keys. It doesn't include the oops, the water heater exploded fund. It doesn't include the $300 a month in utilities. To actually live in this house comfortably, you're looking at an all-in cost of roughly $4,100 a month. Now, you might be thinking, Maven, I make $100,000 a year. I can afford $4,000 a month. Actually, no, you probably can't. Let's look at the rule of 28. Lenders generally want your housing costs to be no more than 28% of your gross, pre-tax, income. To afford a $3,618 mortgage payment under that rule, you would need a household income of roughly $155,000 a year. But here is where it gets really interesting and a little scary. The 28% rule was designed in an era when grocery bills and car payments didn't eat 40% of your take-home pay. If you make $155,000 after taxes, 401k contributions, and healthcare, you might be taking home $9,000 a month. If $4,100 goes to the house, you have $4,900 left. Subtract a $700 car payment, the 2026 average, $1,000 for groceries and dining out, $400 for student loans, and suddenly, you're living paycheck to paycheck on a six-figure salary. This is what I call the high-income/no-wealth trap. You look rich on paper, you live in a $500,000 house, but you're one bad transmission away from financial collapse. So, if the math is this bad, why are $500,000 homes still flying off the market? It's not just supply and demand. It's psychology. Specifically, it's the sunk cost fallacy mixed with anchoring. Most buyers today have been waiting for the crash since 2022. They've spent 4 years watching prices go up. Psychologically, they've anchored to the idea that if they don't buy now, they will be locked out forever. Sometimes in the script of our lives, we feel like we have to hit certain milestones by a certain age. I'm 32. I should own a home. This internal pressure forces us to ignore the brutal math. We tell ourselves, I'll just refinance when rates hit 4%. Look, hoping for a refinance is a gamble, not a financial plan. You're essentially betting your entire financial future on the Federal Reserve's mood. If you can't afford the house at today's rates, you cannot afford the house. Period. Here's another thing most people don't realize: the 1% rule. Conventional wisdom says you should set aside 1% of the home's value every year for maintenance. On a $500,000 home, that's $5,000 a year. That's another $416 a month you need to be saving. Think about it like this. Rent is the maximum you will pay for housing. A mortgage is the minimum. Everything else is variable, and you pay for every surprise. When you rent for $2,500 and the roof leaks, that's the landlord's $15,000 problem. When you own for $3,600 and the roof leaks, that's your $15,000 problem on top of your $3,600 payment. If you don't have a house emergency fund of at least $15,000 to $20,000 after your down payment is gone, you are playing a very dangerous game. You might be thinking, but Maven, real estate is an investment. I'm building equity. Is it though? In the first 5 years of a 30-year mortgage at 6.3%, almost 85% of your payment goes toward interest. You aren't building equity. You're paying the bank for the privilege of living in their house. Let's look at a storytelling example. Meet Sarah and Mike. They bought a $500,000 house in early 2026 with 5% down. They were so excited. But they didn't realize that in their state, property taxes reassess after the sale. 6 months in, their escrow doubled. Their $3,400 payment became $3,800. They had no maintenance fund. When the HVAC died in July, they had to put $8,000 on a credit card at 24% interest. Now, Sarah and Mike are stressed. They're fighting about money. They stopped going to the gym. They stopped seeing friends. They have a great house, but they have no life. The house didn't make them wealthy. The house made them slaves to a debt cycle. I promised you the answer to who can actually afford this. Here is the Maven stress test. You can afford a $500,000 house in 2026 if 1. Your household income is $160,000 plus. This ensures your DTI stays healthy. 2. You have a 20% down payment, $100,000. This kills the PMI and lowers your payment to a manageable level. 3. You have a $20,000 cash reserve after closing costs. Because life happens. 4. The total housing cost is under 30% of your take-home pay. Not your gross, your net. If you don't meet these, you aren't buying a house. You're leasing a lifestyle you can't afford from the bank. If you looked at those numbers and felt a pit in your stomach, don't worry. This isn't about being doom and gloom. It's about being smart so you don't get trapped. Here is what you should do right now. Step 1. The ghost mortgage test. If you currently rent for $2,000, but the house you want costs $3,600, start paying that $1,600 difference into a separate savings account every month. If you can't do it for 6 months without feeling the squeeze, you can't afford the house. Bonus, you just saved nearly $10,000 for your down payment. Step 2. Aggressively fix your credit. In 2026, the gap between a 680 score and a 780 score can mean $400 a month in interest. That is literally thousands of dollars a year for doing nothing but paying your bills on time. Step 3. Look for value over vibe. Stop looking at the $500,000 turnkey homes with the white oak floors. Look for the $420,000 home that needs a $30,000 kitchen update. You can sweat equity your way into affordability. Step 4. Redefine the goal. Sometimes in the script of the American dream, we forget that a house is just a shelter. If it's standing in the way of your freedom, It's not a dream. It's a cage. The math in 2026 is brutal, but it isn't impossible. The key is to stop listening to real estate agents who say marry the house, date the rate, and start listening to the math. Math doesn't have emotions. Math doesn't care about your Pinterest board. It only cares if the numbers balance. If you want to build real wealth, you have to be willing to look like you're falling behind, while everyone else is overextending themselves. Buy the house when you are ready, not when the market tells you to. If this video helped you see the housing market a little more clearly, do me a huge favor. Share this with one friend who's currently house hunting. It might save them from a decade of financial stress. Keep learning, keep building, and remember, your net worth is not the same as your house value. I'm Maven, and I'll see you in the next one.